Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Miles. Welcome to our presentation for today, which is, the title is Geopol.ch FME as a service. So we'll take a bit of time to talk about our service that we are currently offering in Switzerland, and which is one of the pioneer projects on FME Cloud. Little show of hands. I was here 3 years ago presenting something similar. I know that some of you were here. Who was there 3 years ago for some kind of similar presentation? Okay, that's not too bad. Good.
So a short presentation. This is my colleague Jean-Luc Miseret. He's a surveyor. He's been an FME user for quite a while. He's also the director and therefore my boss. He's a fantastic person, I must say. And we have a lot of fun presenting stuff and developing stuff using particularly FME.
Yeah, and with me is David Rexton. So we're talking pay rise in June usually. That's why he's so nice to me. Most of you know David already because he's quite famous and active on the Knowledge Center. He's number 2 on the leaderboard. He's a certified professional, certified server professional. And he's working at NASA in the large projects, doing consulting, development, but also inside we like having him with us as he can do some pretty good review and work with the whole team. NASA as a whole has got 16 employees working in the field of GIS and FME integration. So we're at an FME user conference. We all know how cool FME is. We can achieve great things, we can do super things, that's really cool. But the whole point of the whole software is not to challenge the developers and have fun, but it's to solve the real challenges. And what we want to do with Geopol is to bring the tool that the user needs at this time, and not exactly to let the user have fun. So that's what I wanted to show with that image. That's none of us there, but saying that biking's cool, but sometimes you have to take the lift just because it brings you in a more efficient way to the top. It's fun to go up, it's fun to climb it on the bike, but sometimes you just have to take the lift because that's how you're most efficient.
Did you take a lift yesterday when you were out?
No, I rode on the bike. It shows on Strava when I take lifts, so I can't do it. This is how we do, and that's our offer with Geopol. At the core of the system, there's an FME Cloud. As said, we're one of the pioneer users. We are setting up an instance, could be many instances of FME Cloud. On top of this, we add 3 layers. One of them is a documentation, because the user, the real user that wants to do something on the everyday, for the everyday task, he doesn't care about the FME server, FME Cloud interface. You just want something very efficient and to know what to do, kind of run away from the black box effect. Second layer we're adding is a management of users and rights. We want to be able to make some money sometimes. Sorry, but that happens. We want to be able to offer some processes that are to be paid, or we want to make sure that the users are known or are controlled. Third level, we're adding a simple multilingual user interface. Multilingual, you probably know that Switzerland has 3 official languages, plus English, which is pretty common in the technical world.
Isn't it 4 languages?
Yeah, it's 4, but the 4th one, they barely know about techniques. No, the 4th one, they speak many languages, and it's very small, and it's only a few thousand people, so yeah, we can't really support Romansh in any technical application, but that's right. Okay, so we have to offer something very simple so that the user can get exactly to the point and do what he needs and not what we want to do. When I prepared my slides a couple of months ago, I thought that I was going to put that little unicorn to say that for us, that Geopol is also a project where we can have fun. That was fun inside a company to develop something, to create a new challenge, to identify needs of clients and see what we could do, what we could have for perspective in the 5 or 10 years, how we can be innovative. Well, in the meantime, as close as last week, we had some kind of a dark unicorn coming to our system, trying to find a leak in our security, and that dark unicorn jumped between the FME Cloud and our front end, getting to our FME Cloud token and attacking it. Well, that was pretty cool exercise as well. Not as fun, but that was something to do. So within 2 days, we had to fix and consolidate everything just to make sure that our users would remain safe and that we wouldn't lose any data.
And I think we were very lucky about the whole situation around it. It goes a bit to what Chris Hadfield said this morning about failure and how you can learn from failure. And I think we didn't have a huge failure, but we had a bit of a sensibilization of what it means to be secure, what it means to be in the cloud. If you're in the cloud, you're very visible. You can be vulnerable if you don't take precautions. And for us, it was really interesting to see how the monitoring we had built into the system came to its own right. And we actually got an alert pretty quickly that somebody was trying to access parts of Geopol through a non-user interface entry. But that was pretty interesting. Nothing serious happened. We're very happy about that, but we learned a lot about it, and we also learned that there are people out there who have interests in FME that are a bit on the side of the usual.
Yeah, and I must say I'm partly responsible for that, not as a developer, but as a company leader. A couple of years ago, my developer said, so how could we secure this? I said, well, if we're attacked, that means that we're interesting. And if we're interesting, that's an honor. So just go ahead with that. Well, that was a bit leaky. That's not exactly the obvious way of handling security. But in the meantime, we fixed it using the Amazon API gateway in the middle. So found a solution, implemented it within days. And that's really cool. We learned something, harmless warning. So what is Geopol? Geopol is a WAS. I just made up a word, just made up an acronym. That's a workspace as a service. For those here that speak German, we can say, was ist das? I just had to, there's a few Contera people here. Geopol is a workspace as a service. That is, we developed that workspace, or someone develops a workspace, and then publishes it as a service to the people who really need it. That is the guy, that is the draftsman that is taking care of the data quality, the surveyor draftsperson, trying to produce a plan of higher quality, geometric quality, topological, or attributely correct, doesn't care about FME, doesn't care about having a license, doesn't care about running a workspace. But then they can connect to that service, upload their data, and get the information. So that's what it looks like. David will go for it.
Let's see here. We'll try something that didn't work just a few seconds ago.
Yeah.
But let's try to do it like this.
We pretend to be inexperienced enough to make live demos, but that's...
Yeah. I think yeah, that shows. Perfect.
Okay, so there we have a brand new user interface that we revamped a couple of months ago, and we completely changed. The first version was based on what I call the book paradigm. That is, in a book, you first have a cover, then you have a table of content, then you have an introduction, then you have a foreword, and then you start with chapter 1. In our time, and in our world of Google time, you want to go straight to chapter 1. And then if you're interested in a table of content, then you'll go back there. So we completely revamped our user interface and going straight to the list of processes. If you go back there,
yeah.
Sorry.
I was a bit faster.
Yeah, you were too fast for me.
You
there. So when you enter that Geopol.ch website, you get there, which is what you want. This is not the most fancy page. We didn't invest lots in graphical design, but it's efficient. You get to the point. You can filter. There's a filter search bar on the top, kind of Google-like. The processes are sorted after usage, so the more they use, the higher they come in the list. That type of processes. Efficient, Google-like, white, simple. And then, if you want to do more or use it, then you click on the detail button.
We agreed on this one, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Nah, they're all good. Where you have all your parameters, your FME users, you know exactly where those parameters come from. The person that doesn't know anything about FME sees that as input fields. Inputs the data that's required, inputs the parameters. Notice that the only identification that is required here is an email address. Well, at the end, we still have to send a result somewhere. So we got people sending to mickey.mouse@disney.com. Well, I don't know where I'm going to send the result to, but that's it. And if you want to know more, then there's that documentation that you find a bit lower underneath, where all parameters are explained, where we explain the algorithm we're using, and all details. So we're kind of taking away the black box effect. And all that is available in 3 languages, French, German, and English.
And speaking of email addresses here, we log everything, and it's pretty interesting to go through the logs and see. It tells you a lot about the users, what they're doing, what they want to do. Sometimes you can see users experimenting because they're fumbling a bit in the user interface. They don't know quite what they want to do. And it's actually pretty valuable feedback if you're doing a user interface. It's kind of a non-invasive quality control, if you want.
Okay, can we go back to your presentation?
Yep. And this is where it gets exciting.
Technology works. That's fine. So from that user interface, when you click, then you set up your parameters. Yeah, that's the backup slides if the demo isn't working. And that's what happens. You get that little window saying that your process is running, and you get 2 possibilities that is free for the user. Either you can have a box, a pop-up that lets you download your result, or you get an email with the link to the result. The result will be stored on S3, and you can download it from there. Okay, so that's the process, how it is, and we thought that what's more interesting to you is to see how it's used. So I didn't have that 3 years ago, I was just pretending I had users, but now we actually have them. We have users that are paying us to do this. So we have a few use cases of people using it in real life, for the real world, for real tasks. So one of the Swiss states uses Geopol to disseminate data. They decided that the whole spatial data infrastructure was to be stored on ArcGIS Online. That's it. They're providing feature services. That's not very convenient for a surveyor, an architect, an engineer to get the whole state as an Esri feature layer, whereas he only wants one layer on one community. So with that, on Geopol, you can set your parameters, which community you want, which layer you want, and then you get your data as shapefile or geodatabase or DWG, for example. Second example, that's the canton of Geneva. They want the surveyors, so for when you do a subdivide a lot, for example, then they get the data out of the central database, surveyor works on it, makes the subdivision, and then sends it back to the central repository. And then the state of Geneva asks that when the surveyors send the data back, they give along with it a certificate established by Geopol that is validating that the data is correct. Okay? So no data gets back into the central repository without the certificate delivered by Geopol saying there are no more logical, attributive, topological mistakes in that data set. Another one, for the land management data, they had a data model. That was version 4. Sorry, I'm mixing up languages here. That was version 4 of the data model. Then the state decided at political level that they wanted to make a new model, new data model, which is version 5. And they said, that's pretty harsh to tell all our users, from now on you will work with version 5 and that's it. So they provided a service that lets every user convert their data set from version 4 to version 5. It's pretty easy. For you FME users, that's trivial stuff. The workspaces behind that, they're not that big, but they're made useful to everyone. To every single surveyor, architect, engineer, they can now convert data from model 4 to model 5.
And just to add, for those who are a bit unfamiliar with the workings of Switzerland, Switzerland is basically like the US. It's a collection of 26, 26
yeah,
states, And they are very independent. Actually, they're so independent, they can have like completely different ways of representing the same data between the cantons, which makes for a lot of interesting challenges when they are supposedly trying, or they're supposed to try and collect the data centrally in the central government. So there are a lot of challenges in homogenizing and quality control and schema changes, etc. in Switzerland. It's a pretty unique setting for such a small country, I think.
It's completely inefficient, but it's very good for consulting firms, so we like it. Finally, last case, we are changing the reference frame for geographic data. So we're changing the projection system, so to say, which that was the same case, was in France, was in Germany as well. One canton then developed a workspace to convert this, and I showed this example as pretty representative, as they've included our Geopol page in their own website as an iframe. So simply our Geopol page is now a part of their website, and they can use it, they can call it from there.
I can also say that in that workspace behind there's always also a custom transformer developed by us in Java that does a lot of interesting triangulation work on the data sets. And that is work that would otherwise not be possible with FME. So I can also plug the APIs in FME, where you can do really powerful stuff if you have developers on your team. And also we have a lot of interesting experience using those technologies now. So it kind of opens up new horizons with FME. And if you're using Java or Python, you can also very easily use those technologies on FME Cloud. You're not bound to, let's say, Windows.
Mm-hmm. And now I'm pretending that's used, but we want to know that system living. We want to know and see that system living, that it's alive, that it's working. So we have set up, that's pretty much eat your own dog food, as Dale likes to say. We have a workspace that reads the logs of FME server, kind of compacts them, and displays them. So that's for one of the process in the canton of Geneva. That's live, so they're all sleeping. But then you can see who made which checks, at what time, how long it lasted, and so on. So that's, you see there, it's typical. You see the same users that made a couple uploads. That's typical of data checking. They uploaded, looked at the log, corrected, re-uploaded, and so on. That's why you have the same user. So it tells you pretty much, doesn't tell you much. It just says how long it lasted and when it started, when it closed. So when we get a call saying, I've never got my result, we can say, your computation was done at 12:22. If you haven't got it, then probably go to your spam folder or whatever. But from our side, everything went fine. And then with that, we have the direct access to the PDFs that are produced, just to make sure that it happened correctly.
It's also very helpful for telephone support if they call us and say that there's something wrong with the PDF, it doesn't present itself properly or whatever. We can download it very easily at our place without having the data set and run everything one more time. But of course, it depends on the use cases. But for this use case, this was very handy.
Yeah, and remember, that's very important for the clients and the users. We have no access to their data. What they uploaded is uploaded to FME Cloud, and we don't go there. And that's very important for them to know that they're not sending their file to Ansel. They're sending it up to a service, and we don't have access to it. Otherwise, they'll start getting picky about what are you going to do with my data? Am I going to find my shapefile in your next demo? Whatever. We don't want to touch that. That's not none of our business. So if it doesn't work, we actually call them and say, could you please send us back the data? It's probably not most efficient, but at least that's clean and safe.
And again, as you said, this whole report here is generated with a fairly compact workspace that just generates some HTML code, and you can really make some very simple reporting stuff like that very quickly.
Yeah. And now I wanted to emphasize a bit on one of the processes which I find really cool and very future-oriented. Checking data is definitely a big issue, a big challenge. So we've been setting up on Geopol a process that is called Data Checker, that is based on a so-called rules file. A rules file is an Excel file with a given format. I'll show it later. With the given format which defines what has to be tested. You're testing that Excel file against your data file, usually a shapefile, a geodatabase. You let Geopol do the data checking, and you get your results. So the rules file is really an Excel file. We provide, on the website, we provide a seed file, so the format we require, and then the user can say in the feature type, my shapefile polygon, I want the attribute object art to contain a value which is either canton or canton, okay? Typical two languages. So that's what you define in the rules file. Then you zip the rules file and the data file together, and you upload it to Geopol, and you get the result. As an HTML, you get the list of all tests that were done, the mistakes that were, or the errors that were noticed, plus you can download a shapefile with all the errors in. And we represent this graphically as well on the page, saying in the polygon that is colored there was that mistake, value that was expected is, value that was actually in your data set is, and so on. And that's something you can do, that's something you can test yourself, you can work on it yourself, uploading and generating your own rule file and testing against your data file.
Could we have used an XML file for that?
Oh yeah, Don would have loved it, but remember that we're always talking to simple user, to efficient user. And if you're talking to your surveyor, to your architect, an XML file is just Chinese to them, whereas Excel is the most common database in the world, so it's probably way easier. Well, as a last word, something coming from the world tour. If FME is magic, then Geopol is FME for muggles. So it's really not made for the wizards, it's made for the muggles. Thanks very much. Is there any question? Yep, Claude. Yep, so pricing model. So we have, the current pricing model is that the client gives us the mandate to publish a job. And we charge 2,000 francs a year, pretty much 2,000 US dollars a year, to publish one service. So typically, they're Canton Geneva, Canton Fribourg, the ones I showed there, they pay $2,000 a year. And I can say that this year is a very good year for us. We pay our safes bill with Geopol. That's pretty good. On the startup world, then we're starting paying our bills. That's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, that's much better than what Don said. He said, oh, we're still on FME, we're still in the investment mode. No, we pay our bills. That's good. Yep.
So once the services are published, it's sort of like surveyors or others are basically required to use it, right, as part of their work to interact with the canton?
Yeah, that's exactly. It's a typical Geneva where they have to do, the canton says, okay, now we paid for development of this workspace, we pay for the hosting, then now we expect you and we require you to do this. Yeah, definitely.
So you haven't found any that are just sort of sticky or useful on their own that people might pay you for outside or something like that?
You mean?
Well, just, there might be services, like a water network checker or,
Yep.
Maybe not land records, but other areas where people might just be interested in a general service for data quality checks and things like that. But it's hard to find anybody interested in buying those things.
Well, there's a culture in Switzerland. There's for cadastral land management, there's a format and a service which is called Interlist, where you give the data model along with the data. And it's been a culture for now 10 or 15 years that all surveyors always have to let the data check, but that only work with that Interlist format. So that culture is in. And at the end, the users and the state office, they see the exact benefit. Typically, it goes very fast. Before that, you hand in your data set, then the state administration, they don't have time to check it right away. Then they check it 2 weeks later. Then it gets back to the contractor. Contractor takes 2 weeks to check it, but it's got no budget left. So you have to restart the whole thing. Whereas here, you say data must be checked before you deliver. And that's big benefit for everyone. Yep.
Do you ever see a pay-per-use type model?
That was our first idea. Three years ago, I presented a pay-per-use. We're mostly working with public domain, and people don't like or are very reluctant to pay-per-use. They say, oh, what's going to happen if I load an Excel file and the shape was expected or whatever? They're reluctant to it, and we never found our customers with the pay-per-use. But that was originally the first idea, yeah. You know, in Switzerland, we're more used to watching the regular public TV channels than Netflix. Yep.
Are there any plans to roll out a Geopol.ch or a EU?
If you want, that's fine. This is my business card. Anytime. No, really, that was part of the revamping of our front end. We used to be really cloud and really cloud-based for the front end as well. And now we've made it much more flexible. It's based on Angular. It's really deployable on-premise as well. So if you're a state government and want to have your own Geopol running maybe on your own FME server instead of going to the cloud, easy. It's possible.